if someone approached me, you know, at the gym or at a coffee shop that I go to frequently, and I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know that I want to go on a date with you. And I definitely don't want to have to see you every other day here again. Like, you know, if things don't work out, then my inclination is just like, oh, sorry, like, I'm not interested. Like, no. But if you chat a few times, I know who you are now. We would chat before class, we'd chat after class. And then after having a few conversations, he invited me out.
So one of the things that we've been discussing here is intelligent men and how intelligent men often have challenges when it comes to dating women. But fortunately, if you're an intelligent man and you do overcome the social obstacles of talking to women, women find that super attractive. Women love intelligent men. Now, you should always read for yourself, not for women. But what's absolutely clutch is that there's programs out there, such as today's sponsor, Short Form, that actually allow you to get the summarized version plus extra notes and comparisons between other books, as well as all kinds of other details, discussion points of the books you love. As an example, I love Robert Greene, Laws of Human Nature, The 48 Laws of Power. You also get to discover new books that you never heard of and have always been curious about, because a lot of the time people want to read a book, but they aren't sure what's in the book necessarily, so they will hesitate. With Short Form, you always get to see an overview of everything. It just saves you so much time. And in order to get 5 days of unlimited access and a discount when you join Short Form, be sure to check out the link in the bio below. Just use my code. This is going to save you a bunch of time and money, guys. Basically, you get access to thousands of book guides that are customized with all that detailed analysis for the cost of like one book a month. But most importantly, it's like a book summary on steroids. You can always go back to a book you might have forgot stuff about and get caught right back up to speed, which is awesome. So be sure to check that out, guys. Shortform.com/bro. Check out the link in the description. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Good Bro, Bad Bro, the #1 show in the world for dating, self-improvement, social skills, and lifestyle improvement. Today we're back with another guest via Zoom, and this is going to be a really interesting one, guys. We have a female dating coach. Basically, she specializes in helping men from usually ages 30 to 45 help find their dream partner, girlfriend, and basically she gives the advice on how to meet women from the female perspective. Before we get started, guys, a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment for the algorithm below, and enjoy the video.
And I'm feeling good. I like a dude who fucks his wife up and then gets it back together.
What's going on?
I was gonna say not a lot, but so fucking much that I'm getting married in less than 2 weeks, and I'm moving.
Wow, okay.
My house is gonna be done being built in 3 weeks, and a lot is happening.
Yo, that's amazing. Okay, congratulations. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, welcome to the show. What a way to start things off. I mean, first of all, congratulations on the marriage, but yeah, really quick, I guess, tell us what else, like who you are, what you do, and a background on that.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Hi, I'm Blaine. I'm a dating coach for men. I am excited to talk to you. I didn't realize we were already recording and going right in, but I love that. What else did you want to know about me? Just
your background and what you actually do specifically, because you know, I think that there aren't many female dating coaches, especially in the space. And I also think that the whole dating scene, dating coaching scene, it's very taboo still. So just give some background on what you do specifically.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's becoming less taboo, which is great. Because I've always said, you know, if you're not good at something or you wanted to learn a new skill, there wouldn't be any judgment for a lot of skills around seeking out professional help or hiring a coach. Like if you wanted to get good at tennis, nothing wrong with hiring a tennis coach. And so hiring a dating coach, in my opinion, should really be similar. You aren't taught how to date in school. You're definitely not taught how to understand the opposite sex and communicate with them. A lot of that is trial and error. And for many men or people generally, it takes a lot of, you know, failure to figure it out. And maybe they don't figure it out. So I try and help men skip the steps of, you know, randomly throwing spaghetti at the wall or trying to figure it out, and showing them how to get the best possible results while being true to their authentic selves. So that's really my goal as a dating coach.
Gotcha. That's very interesting because, I mean, first of all, you know, you'd agree there's a massive market on the man side in particular. I'm sure there are female dating coaches and coaches specifically that handle women, but it's overwhelmingly male. And it seems like there's an epidemic where men just have no idea really how to talk to women, how to date properly. It seems like, you know, what used to be a very evenly matched dating world it seems like now it's very leaning towards the favor of women, whereas men, they just seem to have missed that part, whether it's through, upbringing, society. I think that there's a lot of influences that lead to men having bad dating skills. What do you think has led to this epidemic we have where men need so much more help than women when it comes to dating?
I'm not sure I agree that men need more help. Like, I think if you talk to a woman's dating coach, they would oftentimes feel that like women have it worse off. And the reality is, like, it doesn't really matter who has it worse and like who struggles more. It's like, how can we fix it so everyone can sort of meet in the middle and better understand and communicate with one another? Because ultimately what most people are looking for is companionship in that partner. So like, let's help people understand the opposite sex so they can find that. I do think that though that men in more recent times, there's a lot of expectations that both men and women have of themselves and the opposite sex that don't necessarily integrate and go well with like modern dating. And, I get a lot of guys who are like, why do we have to approach? Why don't women do that? Like, I want a woman who's assertive and like can do that also. But the reality is, for many decades, women were taught that you were like, slutty, or, you were like doing the wrong thing if you put yourself out there and you pursued the man. So you should be, standing back and waiting for him to come to you. So whether, a man wants that or not, the reality is you're often going to have to approach, because that's just what women expect, even though in this day and age, it wouldn't be seen as like slutty or putting themselves out there in the wrong way if they did.
Well, yeah, I mean, even when you look back on like the evolutionary level, right? Like you can study all kinds of different animals and, more or less the vast majority of wildlife, including humans, like it's basically the man's role to be the approacher,
Yeah.
right? So for women,
Yeah.
oftentimes it's more so about being approachable, being, receptive, reactive, and putting themselves in a position where they do get approached. And, on paper, that makes total sense. And, what I mean when it was like a lot more balanced back in the day was because, even the most introverted woman would still have to leave her house, right? So even if you have like anxiety or you're shy, you'd still have to go out and like go to the grocery store or go to a bar. Like females would have to like drag their awkward female friends out just to like put them out there. Because if you just stay home all the time, then no guy will ever approach you, right? And, because of that, it worked, everything worked. But the difference now is that if you're, in society, men and women have led to be more shy, introverted, more like, on their phones, on the computers. So they're just less likely to go out. And the counterbalance for that, though, is that now on dating apps, you can be shy, introverted, not be approachable, not go out and put yourself out there, but still have unlimited options for men.
And then get a lot of matches if you're a woman.
Oh, yeah. You can basically like have your cake and eat it too. Whereas if you're a guy, if you go on dating apps and you're like, below a 7 out of 10, looks wise, status wise, I mean, it's a really uphill battle.
Yeah, it's impossible. You won't get any matches.
Right. You won't get any matches, but most men aren't able to approach. They don't have the confidence. What happens is they go down this like dark rabbit hole where they think like, something's wrong with me, or, dating is fucked. So what it's actually led to is that men have to just be so much better than past generations of men because the standards are so high now. And, to iterate on that, for example, like there's a statistic done on Bumble where it said that if you're not 6 feet or taller, then you don't show up to 75% of the women on the app. So
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that. I talk about that, like you will be filtered out if you're shorter, on the shorter side, which just makes it that much more important that every woman who sees your profile should want to swipe right because like your profile is that good. Mm-hmm. And you can't, and I don't care if you're 6'4" and so hot, you shouldn't be using dating apps as your primary means of meeting women because I think they're a crutch. Like absolutely use them, absolutely put your best profile up there and swipe, but you shouldn't have your self-worth tied to that because like who gives a fuck what these strangers think of you in like a one-dimensional profile. And then number 2, like you're doing yourself a disservice because then if you get in front of these women and you can't be flirty and build chemistry and have a conversation, then you're not going to be any further along than you were. You're just going to be out the money for a date and like probably have your confidence shot when she doesn't want a second date or ghosts you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so true. And just to take a step back, we jumped right out of the gates just because I was running a little bit late. But so this would be a really good example because, you're a dating coach, but you're obviously engaged. You're getting married in 2 weeks. I suppose as like an example of how two people that are actually going to be with each other forever met. How did you meet your significant other? Like, what was that?
We met at a workout class, so at the gym.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of Barry's Boot Camp. It's
No, I'm Canadian. We don't have that.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you're based in Canada. Very cool. It's a very well-known workout class here. We have it in most major cities, like high intensity. You leave like very sweaty and red every time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was hanging out in the lobby, and now the story goes, because like I didn't know this at the time, but we'd been taking the same class together like over the course of months. Like he'd often see me there, like we'd be in the same workout class, and he'd seen me a few times. So then one day after class, when I was standing in the lobby, he just came up to me and introduced himself and said, "I've seen you here a number of times, so I wanted to introduce myself. Hi."
Oh, wow. Okay. Just like that.
And then I introduced myself. Awkwardly, I actually was like, "Oh, do you work here?" And he was like, "No, we take class together twice a week." And I was like, "Oh."
Oh, wow. So you thought he was an employee, eh?
Well, because I just didn't know why he was being like so friendly and introducing himself. And like everyone who works there is like that. Like they know the clients. Like it's a very like community centric place. So that was just like the first thing that came to my mind. And he was like, "No, like we take class together." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Nice to meet you." And he's like, "Okay, well, nice. I'll see you around," and just left.
Oh, that's interesting. So he didn't go for the number. That's actually a really good move. That's really smart.
This is I shout this from the rooftops. I'm like, "Don't ask for her number." Like if you're in a class with her, like a school course, or you see her at the gym frequently, if she's your barista at your coffee shop, if it is someplace where you are going to see her multiple times again, or even you're just confident you will probably see her again, don't ask for the number the first time. Instead, qualify her. Like get to know her a little bit, chat with her a couple times. Like, does she seem like she's receptive to you talking to her? Have you established that you have things in common? Make her want to see you again and want to give you her phone number. Because if someone approached me, at the gym or at a coffee shop that I go to frequently, and I'm like, "I don't know you. I don't know that I want to go on a date with you. And I definitely don't want to have to see you every other day here again. Like, if things don't work out, then my inclination is just like, "Oh, sorry, like I'm not interested." Like, no. But if you chat a few times, like, which is what he did, then once he'd introduced himself, I'd see him around. So it'd always be, "Oh, hey, like, I know who you are now." We would chat before class, we'd chat after class. And then after having a few conversations, he invited me out. And then that's how we exchanged numbers.
So kind of planted the seed and then casually said hi, bumped into you a couple of times after that. And then he probably like prospected a couple of questions to you. I like how you said qualified, threw some things up in the air, like, "Hey, like, what are you into? What do you do on weekends?"
Yeah, we had conversations.
Yeah, basically waiting for you to like confirm that you're single, I suppose. Like no mention of, well, this weekend, me and my boyfriend. Okay, that's
like awesome. If you ask a woman, like, "What are you doing this weekend?" or like, "How was your weekend?" and she has a boyfriend, she's probably, not always, but like she's likely to mention it. Especially if she doesn't want you to ask her out.
Interesting. So did you find them attractive on the first impression? Because normally, like if you're in some kind of group setting, if there's like a hot girl or hot guy in the class, you're very visibly aware of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you didn't necessarily notice them, or
I didn't notice him.
Yeah. So was he not conventionally attractive, or were you
he like I mean, you guys kind of look alike.
Oh, really?
But I didn't notice him. Like I wouldn't be like, "Oh, that's my type," but now he's my type.
Interesting. So that's a big thing that is like it's a balancer in dating, because there's lots of guys that aren't necessarily like, a 10 out of 10, but they are a certain woman's type. But what's interesting is he wasn't necessarily your type, but for some reason, something about him intrigued you. So like, what was that?
Absolutely. His confidence, for sure. He's wicked smart, and that was very apparent right from the get-go. Like really good conversationalist, remembered things I told him. This was after when we'd gone on a few dates, like remembers everything I say.
Yeah.
I actually liked, that part of this is not asking for the number at first, like didn't come on too strong. Like we pretty much clicked right away. I feel like I knew pretty early on. I was like, okay, this is someone like I could be with.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, he wasn't, I wouldn't have picked him out from a lineup having not talked to him truly. And
So
now, like, I
yeah.
think he's so handsome and I love him and I'm so excited to marry him and spend our lives together. But I even tell him that, and he knows that he's not like Ken doll or something. Like,
Yeah.
he wears glasses, and I mean, he's fit and he's about my height and he's awesome. He has an amazing personality, and that's like really what stood out.
Yeah, that's dope, because, you know, that serves as like an example of inspiration to those that, like, you know, if you saw him on a dating app, you probably wouldn't have swiped right. Even if he had like the most amazing profile, just because, you know, on a dating app, it's such a very quick judgment call.
Yeah,
And
it's like this.
another thing too, on dating apps, studies show that like women are so much more selective, because each time they do swipe right, it's 90% of the time it's a match. So it's almost like too much pressure on women to be able to like match with every single guy. So
Overwhelming, yeah.
but yeah, that's awesome. Jumping topics, what are your thoughts on the whole like community of people in, as far as like pickup artists, you know, approaching women? Because I come into this space as a YouTuber, and I did like pranks for years. So like I would do pranks, social experiments, stuff like that. And then I came into this whole like red pill manosphere pickup space with like a very different perspective. And to me, it just looks like a giant swamp. You know, it's very flashy, very like manipulation based stuff.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on the whole like community? Because I feel like there's a bad rap.
It definitely gets a bad rap. I would say, like, I don't subscribe to it. Like, it's not the way I teach men, and it's not my methods, and like the red pill pickup artist community don't have a lot of overlap, I would say. And that's not to say like that can't work. That might be more of some people's vibe, but the majority of men I work with have already gone down that route, have explored that, and it didn't work for them. You know, it didn't resonate with them for whatever reason. So I would say, yeah, my teachings are more, what I would like to think is more based in the psychology and understanding of women than strictly tactical, use this line, manipulate to get this. Like, right. I like to give like examples and like lines or scripts that you can like play off of, but I think you're actually worse off if you approach a woman with like a memorized script. You can have like a formula that you follow and some ideas to approach with, but it doesn't usually come off authentic if you're using somebody else's lines.
Okay, what do you know about the blue pill, the other side of the spectrum?
Like, it's funny because when I throw out the word red pill, it's like I hear these terms a lot and I don't know a ton about them, and people will comment on my videos like this pill, that pill, and I'm like, I don't know what the pills really mean.
Yeah, I just learned a lot of them myself. So basically, red pill initially started out as like the truth. So it was very like evolutionary psychology. You must work in order to get successful. Blue pill is very interesting to me because blue pill is essentially arguably like 80% of men. What blue pill is, though, is this idea that everybody should get like a participation trophy. From a young age, men are taught like, just be yourself, just be nice to people, go get the girl flowers and be nice to her. And even though you're like a 5'2" toad, she's going to go with you to prom. And what happens, though, is like men are told this by like Disney movies, society, their parents, but then it doesn't work out. And then they go, well, I'm entitled to this beautiful woman. Like, why am I not getting this? And then they go down the black pill rabbit hole, which is like the absence of light, darkness. And those are like doomers. Those are the guys that are like, I am what I am. I can't change. Women hate me. So that's essentially what the blue pill is. And that's majority of society because, men are from a young age taught like just to pedestalize and basically not take themselves as seriously in value as they do women, like put women at such a higher level than themselves. And then that is actually what leads them to go.
Oh yeah, that's a problem.
Tell me why men should not necessarily pedestalize women, why they should kind of.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone wants to date up. Just like a girl, just like you don't want to date somebody you perceive to be as like less fun, less smart, less cool than you. Like neither does she. She wants to date up. And so if you think she's God's gift to earth, what does that say about you? Like she's probably not dating up. So I always say like you'll never date somebody as if you think they are sexier than you are. Like you need to up, and that doesn't mean you can't think she's awesome and intelligent and charismatic, all these things, like you also need to believe those things about yourself. And so if you're not there, you're not going to date her. So my recommendation is always first up level yourself, like get to the point where you do think you're rad and that you have a ton going for you, because then it's going to be way easier for you to approach women who are at that level and one, have confidence, and then two, not take a confidence nosedive when they're not interested, because you already know that you're worth it, you're great. Which I guess like part of that is kind of what you mentioned with the blue pill, like thinking you're worthy and like that you deserve it. Like you do need to believe that, but you also have to put that into action, and you can't see her as being above you.
Got you. Okay. So one interesting thing that is kind of related to that is, as a coach for men, you're probably going to make them be accountable and you're going to give them like hard truths, right? So if you have a client, for example, that is a guy and he's obese, are you going to be like, listen, dude, like you are going to need to lose a significant amount of weight in order to be attractive to the opposite sex? Do you give them those hard truths? Because I feel like men can take feedback and criticism like that better than women. I mean, for example, like not you specifically, but like if I went on TikTok and I was like, obese women should lose weight so that they're more attractive to men, I would get canceled, right? But if you tell a guy that, it's legitimate feedback and it's true. Like women do not like obese men. So are you straightforward and direct with your advice to men when it comes to that? Like, are you very honest with things that they can improve themselves in?
Yeah. Well, I would say I feel like more comfortable making like those recommendations or statements like directly to somebody than like broadcasting it on the internet and be like, that guys can't get girls.
Yeah.
Like that's also not true. Like, but I think you should be comfortable with somebody at the same level as you are. So like I've worked with guys who like they're like, these are the type of girls I want to date. They're showing me the screenshots, and it's like this yogi girl who's like doing a back bend on the top of a mountain she hiked, and I'm like, have you ever even been to a yoga class? Like, why are you're attracted to her because she's hot? Like, what do you guys actually have in common? And like, look at her profile. These are the things she likes to do. She's gonna want somebody who can do those things with her, and like, you can't. So like, right. That doesn't mean that you have to lose weight, but if you want to date somebody like that, you probably need to at least be able to keep up with her. And that's not to say like women don't. I think women are actually more open to like dad bod and like overweight, but like fit overweight.
Yeah. Well, I'm not talking dad bod. I'm talking like, very well, like obese, like the BMI thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and in that case, I think you would have a hard time dating somebody significantly less obese than you. Mm-hmm. So it's like either get comfortable dating someone similar in size to you or lose weight.
Right. That's interesting though. I didn't even think about that your clients will send you photos of like, their ideal partner.
Or they'll like send me someone like, this is like who I want to match with, or like, this is what should I say? Like, here's like this profile, like how can I open to, get a better response rate?
Right. So one thing that I find is that most men have like very unrealistic expectations. And, just like to the point earlier, especially on dating apps, oftentimes, what you find attractive doesn't line up with what you'd swipe on, versus in real life, if that guy approached you that had a dad bod, you'd be more open to it. Right. Mm-hmm. So, how often from your clients is there a big discrepancy in like attractiveness between your client and then who they want?
I would say that's not like the norm. I think most of the guys I work with are like, one, intelligent and like well-adjusted and realize the reality of the situation.
Okay.
That being said, so this is just things I don't do a ton of one-on-one work anymore. I have a masterclass product, and that's like my main way I work with clients, which does include like some one-on-one coaching, but it's not like this over video. But I do have a service where I do like it is one-on-one. I do a complete profile makeover and a style makeover, which I recently did for a client who is wonderful. He is a wonderful man. He has so much going for him, but he's big. He's like he's like on the scale. He's very active, but he's on the side of like, oh, I'm not like sure you would be able to keep up and do things with me.
Right. Yeah.
But, and so I was like, oh no, like we're doing this whole thing. Like, what if it doesn't work online? What if he still doesn't get any matches? I really wasn't sure, but we got him some new outfits. I took some great photos on my iPhone. We did his prompts together. And at first I thought this was interesting. So we bring his profile live and we start swiping, and it's Hinge. The women Hinge are showing him like for the first 2 days. I'm like, he's like, I feel like it was like showing, because I'm looking at it, but it's showing the type of woman that like every single guy would be like, oh, hell yes. She's like a 10 out of 10. She's like 26. She's like in her bikini. Like, she's stunning. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many hot girls on Hinge. Like, what the hell? And but I'm like, no, because this isn't who's going to match with him. He's over 40, he's overweight, he's active, and he's wonderful. But like, that's not the person he might be able to approach that person in real life because he has an awesome personality, but that's not who's going to match with him. That's not realistic. Right? And I felt like Hinge was doing him a disservice by like showing him all these people. But I also think it gets the guy like, ooh, Hinge is so great. And then now, like after a couple weeks of using the app appropriately, and one of the things I teach is don't swipe yes on everyone. If you don't look like you have things in common and you don't think like she's going to say yes to you, like obviously you can have some optimistic swipes, like say no. And after a few weeks of appropriately using the app like that, he's getting so many good matches. I like checked in yesterday and I was like, oh my gosh, like these are women that are actually really good candidates for you. They're really cute. They're, a little bit older. That's what you are. They are your religion, which was important to you. And like, he already has a few dates set up. And I think something men fall into is they create their profile. They swipe yes on every hot girl and no on anyone who they don't see as a 10. And then they get frustrated. They don't get matches and then delete it and then go back a month later. And it creates this like really unhealthy cycle and like not a good algorithm for them to actually get matches on the app.
Yeah, that's very true. You're basically gaming the app at that point because, they're basically set up to squeeze money out of you and just give you dopamine hits. And one of the things they do, especially on like, for example, like Tinder and when you're starting to use a new dating app, they try to give you top of the stack amongst other profiles. And then they give you a couple top of the stack. So you're more likely to get a right swipe. So that immediately within the first day or two, you're getting a little bit of success. And then it tapers off because the algorithm goes, well, if this guy is only swiped right on 1 out of every 100 girls, they're going to put you at the very bottom. But at that point, you've already felt the dopamine hit. You've already gotten that little bit of optimism. So now you start to strike out on the app. Whereas you gave practical advice in playing within your own field, right? Because Hinge is the same way. They're going to be showing him all these really hot girls so that right away he's like, wow, like this is awesome. These are girls that I have access to. And the guys that design these apps are genius data scientists, right? Like we're talking the slot machine effect, like little things that just make you really want to be invested.
Just a couple more, like, ooh, I'll just pay. And I will say he didn't pay. We don't pay for the app for him. And he's had like great success because he used it really deliberately.
Right. That's why I believe Hinge is much more accurate with matching people because from what I've been told, it shows people that are at your level. Right. Right. So, but the problem is, a lot of guys, they have higher expectations of who they should be matched with, but Hinge is basically like an equalizer. Like whoever you see on Hinge, that's like realistically who's actually interested in you. Getting back to what you said about your clients, who do you feel is like your main type of client? Like what's their age, income, status in life, their pain points?
My profile client, like I would say, close to 70% of my clients are what I call the engineer. And it doesn't necessarily mean they are an engineer. But they oftentimes have a technical job. They oftentimes spend a lot of time behind a computer or a screen. They often self-describe as shy or introverted, at least in certain scenarios. They're usually hardworking professionals, and they actually usually have a lot going for them. They just don't know how to market that to the opposite sex.
Right. So they're generally like very intelligent, calculated, systematic, formula-based, left brain kind of guys, right?
Yeah, oftentimes. That's not like obviously every client, but I would say the vast majority are that way.
Right. There's actually studies that show a correlation between like men who are being more intelligent actually being worse with dating because they tend to really overthink what they say because there's different personality types. And one of them is like people that are hypersensitive. So they're able to absorb way more information than others, which makes them great at math, science, and, following formulas and statistics and stuff. But because they're so hyper aware, they get all these other thoughts, right? Like they'll notice like a very subtle movement, like across the room or something. Basically, they get very anxious and they overthink. And what happens is they tend to lack the qualities of people that are on the other end. They're not the most intelligent, but they just have balls and confidence, right? So it's like Mother Nature's way of like balancing out two different types of guys.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say like overthinkers is a common trait I see. Again, not for everyone. I will say though, like something I like to talk about in my masterclass, I'm like, the ability to follow directions directly correlates to the ability to date women. Like you need to be able to follow directions to take my course and get value. And you also need to be able to follow directions to successfully date women.
If you want to learn the proper way to talk to women and transform your dating life, be sure to check out the Denmo Social course. Denmo Social is our best-selling video course that teaches you how to get real confidence, real results, and meet your next girlfriend. You can check that out by clicking the link in the description and completely transform your dating life. For those of you that need direct help with your specific dating issue, I also offer one-on-one coaching and consulting. The topics that I specialize in and can help you with include approach anxiety, communication, confidence, getting a girlfriend, maintaining a relationship once you have one. That's a big thing where a lot of guys mess up. They let themselves go once they do get into a relationship, as well as getting over a breakup, building a social circle, and much, much more. I still have about 50% availability for this month, so be sure to click the link in the bio below and save your spot. Book a call now. So what would you say, like, the biggest pain point of these guys is? I know you mentioned that they don't know how to necessarily market themselves, but like, what would you say about their tonality, their speaking skills? I imagine they probably stutter a lot. They probably talk pretty fast. Do you work on calibrating their vocality at all?
I talk about that somewhat in my course, like why tonality is important and, especially body language. But that isn't something that I coach on specifically because I don't actually talk one-on-one with a lot of the men who take my master class like this. Right. I don't actually see how they talk. And like sometimes I will talk to them and sometimes, they'll tell me, oh, I have a stutter and whatnot. But I wouldn't say that's, of all the men I work with, that's like, oh, like 50% of them have a stutter. Like, right. It's a much smaller percentage.
Well, I suppose like, as a woman, how important do you think that the communication, as far as like, it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it, the sense of tone, teasing, being flirtatious, like, how many points can that raise somebody that you might not necessarily conventionally find attractive?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, so much, going back to, we were talking about, you mentioned evolution before, like we've only used the written word in a very short amount of time compared to how long we've been communicating with one another. And even like prior to, having language, we were using body language and motions and hand signals. So all of that, even subconsciously, really affects how people perceive you. And I think one of the biggest things I see in men generally that is such an easy fix. I like to call it easy, but it's actually can be quite challenging, is posture. So many people, and I think it's because we're just always on our computers, we're driving like this. You don't even realize your posture isn't that good. And that just signals that you're closed off, that you're, expecting rejection, as opposed to somebody who walks up with confidence and has their shoulders back and their chest up and their chin high. Like that makes a huge difference in how you're perceived. And people are really going to gather their information about you in a split second from the first moment they see you.
Right. Like being very slow, calm, relaxed, and, on a biological level, probably makes you feel safe. Right? Like this person's in control. They're aware of what's going on. They're not really worried. They have like just a very nice vibe to them. And one of the things I teach my clients is that when you go up to somebody, a little bit of a tip, I suppose, is to talk to them like you've known them for a very long time. Because when you go around somebody that say like a friend, a boyfriend, a family member, immediately like your guard is totally dropped. You can say things. You can have like a booger hanging out of your nose. You just don't really worry about stuff. You're in a very comfortable space. So when somebody speaks to you like that, it just alleviates any anxiety you have. And it makes you almost go into their frame of like, wow, like maybe I've known this person. Yeah. I know you from somewhere, right? And, that's essentially what it is, because no matter what lines you say, it's more about your vibe and how you want them to make themselves feel like they're very familiar with you, right? Because then they almost, it's like, there's the old saying, like, women love to be led, right? You kind of want to like have a guy take you into like a really positive vibe and frame, as opposed to like you initiating it. And I will say this though, like, would you not agree that, it's obviously very hard for men to approach women, but when they do, if you see a little bit of potential in the guy, you'll help him out, right? Like, you'll throw some bait in the water, right? If he's kind of stuttering or fucking up, you'll help carry the conversation forward.
Yeah. So I love the word familiar. I think that's so important when you're approaching somebody or when you're going on a date for the first time. You want to do your best to feel familiar to that person. And there's different ways, that you can do that. But that is definitely helpful. And then, look for signs. If you do approach, like how she'll throw you the bait, look for signs that she wants to be talking to you. So if she's not throwing you the bait and, she's like being standoffish or cold, like, that's okay. Like, there are a million reasons that have nothing to do with you that she's not interested in talking to you. So just cut your bait and move on. And then if she does, then, and I always say, look for affirmative responses. So is she asking you a question back? Is she laughing at what you said? Those are all signs that, like, keep chatting with her, see where it can go.
What are some of the biggest mistakes men make when they approach women?
There's a happy medium between approaching somebody with the expectation that she wants to talk to you. Like, there's a balance. If you go in like assuming every woman wants to talk to you and you're going to be offended if she doesn't, then that's not going to work. That's going to set you off on the wrong foot. And that's going to also come off to her as, you're being arrogant. But on the other side of things, you do have to approach women knowing that you bring things to the table and that she might want to, and that she should want to have a conversation with you. So it's a real balance of like not being an arrogant dick and acting like you're entitled to her time, but also presenting yourself as somebody who is confident that she should want to talk to you because you bring a lot to the table.
That is a very fine balance. Do you think that most guys rush in too fast and go for the number too quick, or like what are some technical mistakes?
I think the number one thing is rushing and not forming the connection. Because here's something I hear a lot. Like, I got this girl's number. She seemed interested in going out. I got her number and then I texted her and she didn't reply. And what that tells me is that you probably rushed asking. She gave you her number because she wanted to avoid an awkward situation of telling you no. And then she just didn't reply because you didn't form enough of a connection or get her excited about seeing you again or going on the actual date. So how you fix that is slowing down and focusing on creating the connection. And that often means you don't always ask for the number. If the signs aren't there, if you don't feel like you've formed the connection, you skip it. And maybe you see her another time and you build more and you ask her again, or maybe you don't. And you have to be also okay with that.
Right now, way less men are approaching than they used to. And a lot of that's because of lack of confidence, anxiety. I mean, testosterone levels are lower. You have more guys playing video games on their phones. So there's a bunch of reasons why. But has it ever gotten to the point where, like, obviously you're a conventionally attractive woman. So have you ever been like, when you were single, like, man, like, I'm surprised not that many guys are approaching me. And have you ever like gotten to the point where you're like, fuck, I have to approach guys? Has that ever happened? Or have you always had like a steady amount of approaches coming in?
I would say like it never it's always nice to be approached, if it's done in a respectful way. Like I'm trying to think of specific examples, but like being out in my single days in New York and San Francisco, like there's plenty of times where it's like I'm out with girlfriends and I'm like, we'd love to be approached by guys right now, and they just aren't. I'd also say like I've always lived in big cities. I've always been fairly confident. So I've always also felt comfortable approaching guys myself. So I wouldn't say like, but I think that's also unique.
Well, yeah. Cause I mean, not many women are dating coaches, right? So like, you're obviously a bit unique, I suppose, but most women don't have the confidence to do that, but not even necessarily like the confidence, but like, they just don't really need to. Like, men are usually approaching, but I feel like what's happening nowadays is that guys aren't doing it as much. And because of that, that's why women are going to apps because, let's be honest, like nobody really would prefer meeting on an app over real life.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that men get wrong is that single women want to be approached by eligible single men. Mm-hmm. Like they want that. So and it doesn't mean that you approach her, she's going to want to date you. but it feels good to be approached. And if you're doing it appropriately and, looking for those signs, like when it's time to cut bait that I mentioned, then like put yourself out there more and do it more. And like, you will be surprised the results that you get.
Okay. So as how old are you?
I'm 32.
32? Wow, you don't look 32. You look like 26. There's a big difference between the peak ages men find women attractive versus the ages women find men attractive, right? And there's a big age discrepancy there because, as shitty as it sounds, to a certain extent, men consider women beauty objects and women consider men success objects, right? Because, you'll see a lot of guys that are attractive to women that aren't physically attractive, but they have high status, good social skills. They're funny. They have a lot of resources. So they make like a good provider. And, for women, studies have shown that like they prefer the really hot guy first half of the 20s. But then as men are starting to, not be as interested in women 25 to 30, they start to ignore them. So women have less options and they start to tend to go with
25 to 30. That's so young.
I agree. I think it is young. But I got to send you some cool stuff. They did this study where they asked men and women their ideal attractive age of their partner over the course of like age 20 to 40. So women always found a guy about 2 to 3 years older as the best, most attractive.
Yeah.
Right? So 30, 33.
I believe that. Yeah.
And then towards 40, women like a guy that's a couple years younger, which is interesting. But for men, from the age of 20 to about 50, men always found the most attractive ideal partner to be age 21. Across the board, right?
Interesting. I'm an old hag.
So
you think I'm getting married?
But what I'm alluding to though is like, as a woman that's 31, just think about the last couple of years, like from the age of 20 to 30, like what was your ideal attractive man's age? Like, when you were 20, what were you most attracted to versus now that you're 30, what age were you most attracted to?
Yeah. I agree with like the always a couple years older. I feel like I always dated people who were a few years older than me. So that like lines up. And like now when I look at a 21-year-old, I'm like, you are a child. Like you are how old are you?
How old do you think I am?
30.
No, I'm 27.
Oh, okay. I always think everyone is my age.
Yeah. But yeah, so getting back to the answer, I suppose, like, because men very clearly, they have a clear, this is when women peak. This is the best, most attractiveness. But men are more complicated. There's like wealth, resources, social skills.
Yeah,
experience.
the social status thing can like really raise you up. That's something I talk about so much when guys are like, oh, it's because I'm ugly. It's because I'm short. It's because I'm bald. I'm like, you care way more about what she looks like than she cares about what you look like. I can almost guarantee it.
Boom.
And you have a lot more things in your control that you can do to raise your status that have nothing to do with how you look than honestly she does.
So true. And when you look at like magazines and even like pop culture, society standards, when they have like top 100 most beautiful women, top 100 most handsome men, the men are always like 30s, 40s.
Or like 50s, like George Clooney.
Exactly. So what would you say is when men like kind of peak in attractiveness? Would you put on the lower end of 30, or would you think like with all the other resources and status and things coming into play towards 40, like what do you think is where do you think like, guys really shine?
Well, okay, here's the thing. I think between like 30 and 35, because you have your status thing going for you. You usually have a bit more figured out in terms of like maturity, communication, your profession. You kind of know what's going on there. And then I think a lot of guys still have that like youthful kind of like look at that age. And then 35 is you kind of go one way or the other. And I think this is true for men or women. Once you're 35, you either like still are hot and like actually look 30, or you like already like look like you're a grandma or a grandpa.
Oh yeah. Well, to play devil's advocate on like, how obviously, there's much more pressure on women to maintain their physical appearance, but like after 28, 29, 30, if a guy doesn't take care of himself, he goes completely downhill too. Right?
Yeah.
You got to think years of like video games, drinking beer every weekend, but also one of the big humbling things for men, and, knock on wood, it doesn't happen to me, but around, mid to late 20s, guys lose their hair. And it takes them down immediately, like a point or two. And you could say like, well, some women like guys with no hair. Sure. But it's like it's
you
like
have a lot less options for your styling.
Right. It's a big counterbalance.
The mistake that was like trying to hold on to the hair. Like there are plenty of like smoking hot guys who are totally bald, but there's no smoking hot guys who have like the donut.
Oh, the donut, right.
Yeah, no. You got to just like embrace the bald. And like, I get it. It sucks. You're probably not as comfortable that way. But like, there are plenty of like really hot bald guys. I've had clients who said, I'm like, you got to cut your hair. That's one of my real truths. If I see you and like you're balding, I'm like, shave it off. And then I see them after and I'm like, truly, I didn't know you were hot. Like, you're actually hot now. Like, I thought we were just going to get you up a point or two. Like, damn.
Well,
like,
yeah,
you
I mean,
really good.
That's the thing, right? There's always going to be like the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnsons and the what's his name, Jason Statham's of the world, right? Mm-hmm. But that goes back to like, you know, the physique, right? It goes back to just being deezed out of your face, and like it's tough to tell guys that because, you know, for a guy when he's looking at a woman, he's not necessarily looking at a woman that's like very muscularly toned or like has a lot of like weight around her body. I mean, I guess like the booty and legs, right? Because men, we like our hourglass figure. But for guys, it's tough because, you know, the best thing that they could do sometimes is just gain 20 to 30 pounds of muscle and get a low body fat. And then they go like all the way across the board, regardless of if they're bald or not.
Yeah, I would agree. Like you can do a lot by just like feeling good about yourself and getting in shape. But I think a lot of that comes, like you said, you like look so much better if you gain 20 pounds of muscle. But I think that also is because you're going to be more confident and you're going to like feel really awesome. Like if you crush the gym, like, you know, every single day for a month and are lifting weights and eating really healthy, like you're also going to feel really good despite, like, in addition to looking really good. And that's going to help you feel better talking to women. But if you do all of those things and you like, you know, I don't know, took steroids to get there. I'm not a steroid expert. I don't want to like go down a rabbit hole there, but I'm just saying like you didn't do the work, like, and you still lack confidence and don't feel good about yourself. Like you might get some more matches and things, but you're not going to see your like real results with women change very much.
You said something interesting there. Like when guys start working out, they just have more confidence. Have you ever heard about how when a bunch of women live in the same house, they get on the same period cycle?
Yes.
Okay. So kind of similar to that, to see where I'm going with this. When men are working out regularly, it increases like their testosterone, and there's a certain scent in men, and it's very, very like subtle, but women can actually pick up on it. And they
pheromones?
They can detect when men are confident, have high testosterone, and are healthy just through like, I wouldn't even say it's smell. It's more
like subconscious.
Yeah, it's like the seventh or the sixth sense, right? So that's something very interesting too, because, you know, I'm sure you'd agree once in a while.
I honestly believe that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really weird too, because you've probably encountered somebody before and for some reason you're just like, wow, I find this person really attractive and I have no idea why. Right. And it's almost like you can't catch it and put it in a bottle. But yeah, that's one of the things.
Women have the same thing when they're ovulating.
Oh yeah, that's true too. So studies show that too, like women become much more likely to engage in short-term sex, be more promiscuous, I suppose, based on periods.
Well, I also feel like women are more attracted to them, like kind of I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree with that. Like they become more into short-term sex because they face much higher consequences for getting pregnant from like an unknown partner. Like
yes,
even
that's true. See, that's the big equalizer of like modern dating, because when you think of like why our bodies are set up the way they are, like men, we're kind of programmed to spread our seed as much as possible, just so that at least one of our babies, because we don't control the birth. Women have complete control of the birth. But that's why women are so much more selective, because on a biological level,
they have to be.
If you pick the wrong guy, then that's the kid you have. So you're kind of fucked. Yeah. But now with birth control and condoms and all kinds of stuff like that, it goes way much more into like the like you guys have much more control than you used to, like on a biological basis. Another question for you, actually, when you're recommending like age ranges to men. So let's say like you have a 35-year-old client, 40-year-old client, like, do you kind of set parameters based on, you know, like practical, right? So obviously most 40-year-old guys are not going to be at the level where they can attract a 21-year-old, but maybe like a 26, 27. Like, what are some recommendations you have for the age gap between your clients and the women that they prospect to date?
Yeah. So I am a believer that age is just a number. That being said, you generally are going to have more in common with people closer to your age. You grew up in the same generation. You've oftentimes had this similar life experiences, like you both just went to college, or maybe you're both divorced if you're in your 50s. So I say, look for those similarities and connections over focusing on an exact age. I think the older you get, kind of the wider the gap. So someone who's, I think between 20 and 30, like you have a lot changes between 20 and 30. Whereas between 40 and 50, there's actually a lot less change. 10 years, like, isn't that big of a deal. But again, I think it's all about like the connection and where each person is at in their lives. And like age isn't the only indicator of somebody's maturity level or what they've been through.
That's very interesting, because I like that you have your clients send you like images of their desired results. I think, based on the stats I was telling you earlier about how like men prefer the physical age, I'm sure a lot of them come to the problem where like there is an intelligence and experience discrepancy. Fortunately, though, women actually are much more intelligent at a younger age than men are. So like, for example, men's brains mature, I think, a couple years later than women's do. And I would argue that women are just naturally better at dating. They're just more self-aware. And I think that's because like, on a biological level, like they have to be, right? What age do you think men start to come into their own as far as like intelligence and, attractiveness? Probably like around like 30.
One thing I would say is like I have a large age range of clients. I've worked with guys in their early 20s. I've worked with guys in their late 60s. But the majority, like the medium age is like early to mid 30s, because I think that is the point where guys start to be like, okay, like I have my stuff more figured out. I'm ready now, or I'm at least able to now admit that I want a partner and what I'm doing right now isn't working. So just the pure fact that like that's the majority, like that's the age range of most of my clients, makes me think that's when they like come into the realization that they need help.
Right. So jumping back to the online dating thing, obviously, I like what you said earlier about how like online dating should not be the majority. I believe that online dating, if you are going to do it, should be like 10%. I think when people think of online dating, they make it their exclusive strategy to meet people, and they get off work, just go to their phone, they swipe, and that's like them in their heads like, okay, like that was me trying to date for today, right? Whereas they'd be better off just working on themselves, going out in real life, and
working at a cafe, like going to a bar, introducing themselves to one person.
When it comes to like online dating, the analogy I would make would be like it's like a dessert. It's like junk food, because you should have to eat it maybe a couple times a week after you've had your vegetables, your meals, and you've gotten your work done. Like nobody eats dessert first thing of the day. As far as your experience on online dating, what would you say are the things that made you most interested in the people that you swiped on? So what about their photos? What about their bios?
I didn't ever do a ton of online dating. But I've looked at a lot of online dating profiles. So, what the number one thing that like you can't not have to have any sort of success online dating is clear quality photos. You need to have photos where she can see your eyes. If there's any question of like, I'm not sure what this guy looks like, it's going to be a no. Because like we talked about before, they just have so many options. So they're not looking to match with guys that then they have to like decipher like what he actually looks like. So that's an automatic no. High quality photos, a must. A bio that isn't the same bio, I've read 100 other times. Like, what's it actually going to be like to spend time with this person? Like, what makes him different than the 1,000 other guys on here? Like, that's something that you need to make apparent through your written bio.
When you look at the bio, maybe not necessarily you in particular or you in particular, are you looking at like making you laugh, or like, do you want to see intelligence and interesting and like, wow, this person's mysterious, I kind of want to know more? Or do you want to see like, wow, that kind of made me laugh, that was pretty jokey?
Yeah, I don't think mystery like computes like in a bio. It's just like, I don't know who this person is. No. I think humor, like if you can you don't need to be a comedian, but if you can say something to make her smile, that's always going to win points. And then just like a snippet into what it would like, something that like what you're like, how you spend a Saturday. You don't need to communicate everything about yourself. I see men make that mistake. They like try, and fit their like 2 degrees and 3 jobs that they've ever had into this like 150 character bio. Like, don't worry about that. Those are all things you can discuss in person. You just need to get her intrigued enough that she wants to know more. And that's not through being mysterious. That's through like giving her a little taste.
Okay, what are your thoughts on, when their occupation is entrepreneur? That's a cliche. Or it has their height listed in the bio. What are your thoughts on those?
Well, I feel like with like Bumble and Hinge, it already says your height, so you don't need to put it. And I feel like on Tinder, it doesn't. So like just leave it off, and like she can like suss it out based on, your photos. I actually do think it's okay though if you're on the shorter side to like make kind of like a lighthearted joke or call it out to show that you're that you're self-aware. Like if you're 5'4", like 5'4", I guess. Do you use feet in Canada?
Yeah, we use 5. Yeah, we use feet in Canada. Yeah.
Got it. Then, you like that's going to eliminate you from what some women will consider because they want somebody taller. But if you're able to show that you're confident about it and like make a funny joke, then like she might still be like, okay, that's a good one, and swipe right.
Okay, when you're looking at photos too, like obviously clear photos are key. And I think that one of the biggest problems guys have, especially over 30, is they don't have any photos of them with friends, family, other women. And I don't mean like a girlfriend, but like a mix.
They don't have any photos, period.
Yes. And the ones they do have are outdated, and you can tell. How important is it through the dating app for a man to convey, like, let's say he's really good looking, his photos are awesome, he's like traveling and shit. You're probably going to be like, yeah, that's good. But a less conventionally attractive guy, you're going to be like, okay, let me give this guy a chance. Let me go to pick 2, 3. What are the things that guys can do in those photos? Like, for example, him and he's the center of attention in a room. He's laughing, smiling. There's others around. Him and some friends, maybe like him and somebody shorter than him to show like his physical attractiveness. Like, what would you say can balance out the lack of pure sexual attractiveness?
Yeah.
Strategic photos.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like what we talked about before. It's like you care about her appearance more than she cares about yours. What she wants to know is actually what you look like. So rather than, focusing on okay, how can I look like hotter and more chiseled? Look more fun. Like have a picture, like a high quality photo of you playing whatever sport you play, or like cracking up with your friends, or my favorite, dancing on the dance floor at a wedding where you're like clearly the center of attention and having a great time. Like get photos that show your personality. And sometimes like it's confusing and guys like send me this like blurry ass like Halloween photo from 2015. They're like, but it shows my personality. I'm like, no, quality trumps all. Like it has to be a high quality photo, and that often means hiring a pro. But then in that pro shoot, and it's hard, I get it, work to show personality.
This is obviously going to be like for real life, not online dating, because I don't believe in online dating. I don't.
I loved your analogy of like treat it like dessert. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, no, it's good, especially for your obese clients. You should rip that with them.
Less dessert, less online dating.
So I guess like, from the female perspective, just give like an outline of the ideal boyfriend fantasy. Like, and what I mean by that is like, you're at the grocery store, you're at the gym, whatever, guy comes up, he's cool. And, he's very slow with getting to know you. He remembers things that are about you. You go on your jog with your friends on the weekend. Hey, how was your week? Good. I met this guy. Oh, what does he look like? And then slowly but surely he invites you to this event. And then maybe you guys don't have sex right away. You wait a couple weeks. And then you bring up the talk because, the woman always brings up the talk. What are we? Exclusivity. And then you guys slowly move in together, and then boom, engagement. And like, what's that timeline? Like 1 year, 2 year, like just set up like, pretty stereotypical, but
I don't think you can set a timeline for that. Like I know happily married couples who dated for 6 years before they got engaged. My fiance and I have been together 3 years, and we're getting married in a week and a half. So that was my ideal timeline. And that's, what worked for me.
But I mean, like in your head, like how would you have wanted it to go? Like, what is your Disney story? Obviously, maybe it didn't have to be at the gym, but like you wanted somebody to come into your life, be assertive, interesting, funny, and, win you over time. Like, what did it look like before it actually happened?
I feel like I'm kind of living my fantasy.
Yeah. So what is that?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I met my fiance at the gym. Like I said, I feel like I knew pretty quickly that like, I was like, okay, like there's like, actually this is great prep because I'm writing my wedding speech right now. So let me just go back down memory lane. I was like, okay, like I see like real long-term potential with this person. Like he has so many of the qualities that I like. So very early on, he threw me a surprise birthday party in conjunction with one of my best friends that he like totally orchestrated and handled with like all of my good friends, like many of whom he didn't even know.
Mm.
And that to me, I was like, wow, he's like really considerate. He like wanted to do something. He like really cares like that I'm happy and that I get to be with the people who I love around me, which was important to me. Like I said, he's really smart and not only like intellectual, but he has a pretty high EQ. Men, like we talked about earlier, like often have a lower EQ than women, but that's like something he's like actually worked on.
Okay.
I think that he's quite good at that. And then we had kind of a unique situation where the pandemic hit after we hadn't been dating for all of that long, and we moved in with my parents. So we lived with my parents for 10 weeks, which is a super unique experience that, you know, most people don't get with a partner, especially early on when you've been dating for less than a year.
Right.
And then we spent a lot of time traveling together. We lived abroad and worked, you know, remotely from different places, which was like an awesome experience. I think travel is really important to me. That's was my previous career was in the travel industry. So like knowing I can travel with somebody and they like to explore new things. They're passionate about meeting new people and understanding other cultures and seeing other perspectives and things is really important. So like us doing that together, you know, showed me that about Tim. And then one of the most important things that I talk a lot about with my clients is women need to see that you have a trajectory. So like, what is your trajectory? And this is something that, you know,
status. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to the status thing. Like, you don't need to have the perfect job today, and you don't need to be able to provide for her and a family today, but she wants to see that that's like an aspiration of yours. You have to want to be good at what you do. And that doesn't mean you need to be a doctor or a lawyer. Maybe you run an awesome food truck, but she doesn't want somebody who's just complicit with like flipping burgers in the back at McDonald's.
Right.
Be the best damn burger flipper there was.
A good analogy for that would be like, you know, if you're young, probably more on the attractive side, but you have like the energy, the charisma, the potential, right? You'll get a chance versus if you're like, let's say you're 40 and you have nothing to show for it, then what have you been doing the last 20 years? Right.
Yeah.
So like, if you're at a certain age, you have to kind of have something going for you, because that trajectory, you know, you give a lot of flexibility to somebody that's kind of younger on their mission. So how much older is your boyfriend than you, and what's his job or trajectory, older. I suppose?
Yeah, he's just a year older and he works in startups.
Okay. Interesting. So that's good though. You kind of laid everything out there. You want somebody cool to come into your life and be chill, laid back, not too overzealous, but also like they have a lot of potential. They remember things about you.
They have a lot going on in their life.
Yes. They're spontaneous with throwing little surprises for you. Basically like a little bit unpredictable, not conventional, so to speak, but also they're not locked down in their roots to travel. And this is one of the big things that I've seen in studies between men and women. Whereas like, you know, I remember I was saying earlier, like after 25, women, you know, they don't have as many options because, you know, it's not just the physical.
We speak at 21.
Right. But it's more so like when a woman is young in her early to mid 20s, she might not necessarily have her career set up yet. She might not have her roots planted, but like, you know, women, they just because of, I think, the biological thing with having babies, they're very like, they like to know things. They like to plan. They're much more organized than men. So they tend to like be much more likely to like plant their roots somewhere, have their family set up, their social circle. They don't necessarily like, if a guy comes into their life that's super cool, you know, and they're 22, they might be more likely to like, yeah, I'll move to Australia. Fuck it, you know, but at 25, 26, 30, it's like, this is my city. You know, all my friends live around here. Like I'm solidly planted here. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that is like a pretty strong generalization. Like, yeah, like I have plenty of friends who like moved to the city that they lived in right after college, found their boyfriend, bought their house, like have kids, and that's what they wanted. And that they knew that was their path. And that's a lot of people. And especially that's kind of like the traditional method.
Yes,
that was
the traditional.
expected,
yeah.
You know, for the last 50, 60, 70 years. But I think now there is more talk of nomadic lifestyle, like moving around, not having to have kids. And for me, like I'm a Sagittarius also, like I love to travel. I'm very spontaneous. I'm like here, there, whatever. And like, that's unique to me. Like I have friends who think I'm crazy because I quit my job in New York in 2016 and like went and traveled the world and like started a company. And they were like, you're psycho for doing that. But that's my dream life.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. It's much less likely to, in the short term, like entrepreneurship, you probably understand this. It's brutal, and the thing with guys is like a lot of them will spend 12, 15 years, and then by 35, they have all the money, all the success, but then they don't know how to date. But that's probably an easier problem to fix than like having an independent lifestyle where you run a business and all that. Whereas I feel like, women are much more like, you guys are much more smarter. You're better at school. You're more likely to get degrees. The problem with guys is we're on both ends of the spectrum. So women generally are more smarter and more intelligent than men, but the absolute smartest people in the world are men, but also the absolute dumbest. So you have this huge spectrum of guys on either ends. And that's why guys are like way more likely to be homeless. They're way more likely to gamble and be addicted to, stuff like gambling. They're just nuts and crazy. And I think you can see the correlation with like guys that are just willing to take extreme risks. And, you could argue that it's in the pursuit of attracting women or just because, biologically a little bit different. But
Yeah.
you do bring up a good point that nowadays, obviously men and women both have more options as far as flexibility for their jobs. Like this whole Schmovid thing was really unprecedented because, yeah, you guys can work remotely now. You don't actually have to stay in one spot. So how important was that to you as like, in a partner, like you want a guy to travel and be able to?
I couldn't be with someone who doesn't like to travel and appreciate that. That just wouldn't work for me. But I do also think for the single guys out there, travel is such a good way to meet women. I just did a post on Instagram about this earlier this week. And then coincidentally, I saw that this girl who I met traveling in Croatia, it just got engaged to a guy she met on that trip to Croatia.
Wow.
So, and they didn't even live in the same place at the same time. So I really think when people are traveling, they're outside their comfort zone. They're more inclined to make connections and meet more people than you would like in your daily routine at home. So like meet women traveling. And especially after everyone being stuck at home the past 2 years, like people are even more inclined to go places, travel, meet new friends. So like take advantage of that this summer.
How did you get started as a dating coach?
So I've always loved giving advice to guys. So it's kind of started organically in college when my guy friends would be like, "Ooh, you're a sorority sister." And I'm like, "Nah, she's not going to be into you, but like this one might be."
Where did you go to college?
University of Arizona.
Oh, U of A in Tucson.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay.
How do you know it?
There. I filmed there a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I could see that being a good place for that.
Oh, it's a sick campus. Yeah, it's ASU. All the other YouTubers film there. So people are like, where's the camera? But U of A, it's like fucking the Wild West. Nobody knows what's going on.
Interesting. I didn't know that, but that like makes a lot of sense. There's so many reasons that it would be a good place to film.
Yeah. So you started giving dating advice and then.
So I started giving dating advice just like to friends. Like I always liked to, set people up, help them out with their dating lives. Then when I moved to New York City, it was right when kind of dating apps were getting on the scene, and it was more socially accepted for people to meet online. And I'd look at my guy friends' dating profiles and be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, this is a terrible photo of you. It's no wonder you're getting no matches. So I would just help them improve, one, their interactions with women online, and then their profiles. And from there, it started to be like, oh, like you should help this other person. So I got into one-on-one coaching that way. Just as the side hustle, I worked in the travel industry. And then more recently, I was like, I'm working with these guys one-on-one. I can help a lot more men at a lower price point by starting a course. And that's when I developed my masterclass about 2 years ago. And that's what I do full time now. I don't take new one-on-one clients who haven't completed my masterclass because I think it is the quickest, most efficient way to get men where they need to be. I cover a ton of topics and it's 5 weeks long.
Dope. Okay. We'll talk some more insider secrets after this, but really quick, just, tell everybody where they can find you, what you offer, and your website.
Dating by Blaine. Find me on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Dating by Blaine, or my website, datingbyblaine.com.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing this podcast, guys. Make sure to check out Dating by Blaine. And thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.